His speech title is, Should I Run for Alderman, Part 2. John.
Thank you, Mrs. Toastmaster, and welcome, Toastmaster. So some of you maybe have heard a little more saw my speech last week about running for alderman. An open seat has opened up, and it offers a good opportunity for an upstart to win the election. And some of the notes I took after I gave my speech was, John had great eye contact. John was very down to earth. He was genuine, not like a typical politician. But some of you also said, where's the beef? Why are you running? As Ken would say, what are you going to do for me? So first of all, I'll tell you what an alderman does. Basically, an alderman, he has two jobs. There's 50 aldermen in the city. The city is split up among 50 wards. So if there's 3 million people in the city, there's like 60,000 people in each ward. And the alderman, he's kind of like the engineer of a building or the janitor. People come to him, homeowners or business owners, when they have problems with a pipe burst or they need a license, garbage. The list goes on and on. They're not going to call the mayor. They need someone to help them with finding the right city services. So that's the main thing an alderman does. You don't have to be a Northwestern law graduate or anything like that. You just need a good heart. The second thing an alderman does is he actually meets with the city council. I believe they meet once a month, and they cover the whole city of Chicago for laws that are passed, like parking meter deal, which I would never have voted on. Which brings me to some of the issues that I would be for or against. So there's a couple laws that were passed recently that I never would have voted for. So who here likes the recently enacted speeding camera laws? And even if you do like it, you're probably afraid to raise your hand. We were talking about it at work today. My coworkers were just so annoyed with this speeding camera law that I could tell they were just very upset. They felt it was an invasion of privacy. They felt it was just a money grab by the city. And sometimes being an alderman is just common sense. I remember when I first heard about this potential speeding camera law or rule or whatever you want to call it, I immediately thought it's a bad idea. People have so much stress going on with taking their kids to school, and now they're going to have to, follow the speed limit to the T. I thought it was ridiculous, but it was passed, but I wouldn't have voted for it. And then another law they passed, you may not have really seen, but it's going to come in the next year or two, is a billboard. They have a new billboard law, or whatever you want to call it. They're going to erect maybe about 40 gigantic electronic billboards along Kennedy, and the billboards are leased to a billboard company. And whether you agree with that being a good idea or not, the fact is the city, they undersold the deal. They didn't get enough money for it. I remember reading it again in the paper. I get the Tribune delivered to my house. And it was the first or second time I read about this billboard deal, and I was just looking at the facts and figures, and I was like, some of you know I invest in gold and silver. My progressive friends actually make fun of me because I read the Wall Street Journal. But I have a good mind for finance, even though I'm not a banker. But I was reading about this billboard deal, and I was just doing some calculations on the back of the envelope, and I was like, the city, they're not getting enough money for this deal, whether you're for or against it. But sure enough, the city council, they passed a deal, and then later on, some progressive aldermen who voted against it, like Scott Waitspack or Robert Fioretti, they're both on record as saying it's a bad deal. Which, by the way, I would caucus if I were elected, lucky enough to win, if I run. I would caucus with the progressive caucuses, about 6 or 7 aldermen. So I would take my lead for that. Now, a final issue I'd push for, some of you, Pat, you didn't see it because you weren't here, but I did a speech about the Fight for 15. It's about a lot of service workers, or in the past few years, the service part of our economy has grown so large that fast food workers, people that work in big box retailers, whether you want to do that job or not, the fact is they don't make much. They make about, I think in Illinois, the minimum wage is $8.25 or something like this. And that might be enough if you live in a small town, but the fact is in Chicago, every day prices are going up. I just read about rents going up, food prices, energy. Imagine you're making $8 an hour. They're like, as I said in my speech before, they're kind of like indentured servants. And it's not just high school kids, it's kids with family. So what I would try and do, whether I could do it or not, I don't know, but I would try to release or make an ordinance for the city of Chicago, talk with my fellow progressives, and at least try and get the city wage for large corporations, these big box retailers or fast food operators, of say $12 an hour, with the ultimate goal being phased in over a few years of $15 an hour. So these were a few issues that I thought of to kind of fill out my agenda. And other than that, it's just something I would really love to do. I remember when I campaigned for state representative, there's actually a lot of politicians that don't really like campaigning. It's something they have to do. But for me, I really loved it. I remember knocking on people's doors, kind of hearing some of their problems, sometimes being let into their homes. And I remember I was on the west side once. It was a lower income area. And I volunteer a lot for other aldermen. Not as much, but I did it a few years ago to help get Alderman Arena elected. I volunteered for him a few times a week for a couple months. But I was on the west side, and it was a very poverty-stricken area, and I was knocking on the doors from other aldermen, talking to this lady, and I was trying to push this, I think his name was Jason Irvin, and she was just looking at me like I'm giving a spiel, and she's like, yeah, but what about you? Are you ever going to come back and do anything for me? And it just really touched me that, like, she knew that it was like, yeah, this is another other guy, he's going to be just like this guy, and it's never going to change, but, you know, is there ever going to be someone that really cares to make a difference? So that is the type of alderman I would like to be. So I leave you with this closing comment. Should I run?